Welcome to Exception Seekers, the show where we challenge conventional views on youth mental health and explore stories and experiences that offer alternative perspectives. Today, I sit down with Emily Beauchamp, a full spectrum doula and owner of Growing Together Doula Services in Muskoka. This is a conversation about supporting people in big life transitions, being a village, creating a village, and ways that we need to just show up. I hope you enjoy. Being a young person can be tough. Raising a young person can be tough. Whether it's school stress, family dynamics, or navigating challenging emotions, everyone needs the right support. That's where Sound Youth Counseling comes in. We specialize in helping children ages 4 and up through individual, parent, and family counseling tailored to meet each person's unique needs. From tackling tough issues at home or school to providing customized workshops and professional development for teachers and community leaders, we're here to make a difference. At Sound Youth Counseling, we believe young people deserve a safe, welcoming, and accepting space to grow and thrive, and every family deserves the tools to support them. If you're looking for support, visit soundyouthcounseling.ca and see how we can help. Sound Youth Counseling, empowering individuals, supporting families, and building stronger communities. Emily, thank you for joining today. I've been really looking forward to this conversation. I feel like it's been a long time coming since our first coffee meet.
Yeah,
Months
I'm so
ago.
excited. I've been so excited to hop on with you.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, maybe we could start with, you could tell us a little bit about your practice, Growing Together Doula
Yeah.
Services, and what that is that you offer. Because I know you refer on there as a full spectrum doula or full
hmm
service doula,
Full spectrum. Yeah.
full spectrum doula. And so, yeah, sort of helping us understand like what is that?
Yeah. So, yeah, Growing Together Doula Services started in 2017 when I was 8 months pregnant with my second.
Oh, wow. Well, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and so it was, you know, just the stars aligning a little bit of looking for a career change, having we're going to have two small children, and
Yep.
where I really wanted to head with my life and
Mhm.
as a parent and a working parent and things like that. And I had been doing breastfeeding peer support through
Okay.
the health unit, my community health unit in North Bay, and wanted to expand that as well. And
Mhm.
someone had said, "Hey, have you ever heard of a doula?" And I hadn't at that point at all.
Yes.
And then fell in love with the career that way. Started with postpartum support specifically. It's something that you can schedule, so it was good
Yes.
for having little children.
Right. Right.
And then over the years, it has expanded to what is called a full spectrum doula, which means I support families getting pregnant, being pregnant, labor and birth, postpartum, and grief and loss. And then so I could be with families for upwards of almost closer to 2 years
Okay.
throughout their whole perinatal journey. Um,
Yes.
there's also, lactation support and whatnot, and other little bits and pieces into
Yeah.
postpartum that are a little bit more specialized. But um, and then I also got my childbirth educator training or certification as well,
Yeah.
which just helps with lots more education for clients and
Yeah.
teaching and whatnot. So that's what full spectrum means, is that we kind of are all walking alongside that full perinatal journey.
Okay.
And there's even then some doulas that head into end of life care as well. I'm not quite there yet, but
Okay.
sometimes they even go that distance as well. So stepping a little more out of that perinatal care.
Right.
Mm.
So, in thinking of, doulas also being end of life care for some, it's sort of this position that supports people during really life-changing transitions almost.
Mhm,
Whether
mhm.
that's like welcoming life, celebrating life.
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
these
Hmm.
like menopause doulas are becoming a little more popular as well, which is like a really
Okay.
another big transition specifically for women, but that is
Yes.
another big area that, we don't have a lot
Hmm.
of support or knowledge around.
Hmm.
I, I'm not there yet, but I hear that it's quite a big time of transition and hormones and changes.
Right. Huh.
Um, Very similar to, that
Everything else.
perinatal time and your end of life
Right. Yes.
and whatnot as well. So yeah,
Oh,
doulas are
yeah,
really
that's interesting.
multifaceted. We're getting really multifaceted these days.
Yes. So when someone had said to you, "Hey, did you ever think about being a doula?" and you hadn't really heard of that, um, how did you go find out about what that would involve?
Yeah, just like a what is a doula on
Okay.
Google.
A good Google
And then like
search.
how do you become a doula, right? It is a not a it's not a profession that's regulated like your RMTs or a therapists and things like
Okay.
that. So
Yep.
anybody can step into that role and there's not like a governing body. So what you do is you find a training organization that
Okay.
you resonate with. Lots of them now, especially after COVID, do online, and then
Mhm.
you have to complete so many hours and projects and things like that. Some do a bit of a hybrid where you might be in class for a weekend and then the rest is online and projects and hours and whatnot.
Okay.
There's lots of them out there now.
Yeah.
And there's even ones now where you can step into that full spectrum training right off the bat. For me, I did it each individually over the years.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I've had a few different trainings from different organizations, uh,
Mhm.
which is helpful. You get a bit of diversity and
Yeah. Different perspectives or
yeah, exactly.
emphasis. Hmm.
So definitely, you can do it either or, and it's not something that and some people start with one modality and then they're like, oh, I do have an interest in
Right.
XYZ, and then they'll go and take some additional training and whatnot. Um,
Right.
but yeah, anybody can really be a doula, and some
Yeah.
aren't necessarily trained, but they have been doing the same work that I do
Right.
throughout as well.
Yeah. And as so from your experience with, the education side,
Mhm.
the prenatal side, the delivery side, like where where do you see the biggest gaps in what, like if some I didn't have a doula,
Yeah.
and interestingly, I wonder actually if this is something you see that would be common. I didn't have one. I was I moved while pregnant and changed people and went with my family doctor, which was great. But learning more now since now, I think like, oh, interesting. If I were to ever do it again, maybe I would have a doula for the second one,
Right.
right? I don't know if that's something that you find happens or people kind of do the first more medically and then the second
Yeah,
work or
I feel like it's almost like a 50-50 split. I have
okay.
first-time parents that are like, "Oh my gosh, what did I get myself into?" And
Yes.
I need that support, and they are like looking for that.
Yes.
And then I have, yes, subsequent pregnancies, so second or third time around, and they've like,
Yep.
things didn't go really well last time.
Yep.
Um, what are my options? Or like I've done
Yes.
some reading in, or I've got this toddler. Usually, it's not, we tend to have a 2 to 3 year age gap in general as a
Yep.
society. So, I've got this toddler hanging around and I don't know how to manage both. So like what is that going to look like? Uh,
Yes.
how am I going to get support throughout that? Um,
Mhm.
and whatnot. So I feel like it's a 50-50 split.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And when people say, we don't know what to do, we need this more support or more information, like what's the real gap piece, do you think, that your, support of a doula can offer that maybe someone wouldn't find if they were just going through without one?
The biggest one, and I say
Yeah.
this a lot to clients too, is you don't know what you don't know.
Mm,
So we don't know what questions to ask our providers. We don't know what our options are, and we can read a couple of the books or do a
Mhm.
Google search, but if we're not asking, the right questions,
Mhm.
our information is basic. We, as much as vast as, the information is,
Mhm.
we're kind of like, oh, well, we've had, an uncomplicated pregnancy, and, baby's going to come out one way or another, and things like there
Mhm.
is no pressure to necessarily learn a whole awful lot or
Right.
whatnot until maybe you start to hear traumatic stories or horrific stories from friends or families, or you're feeling
Yes.
pressured in some way. And
Yep.
at that point, that's when our fear is starting to spike, or our self-doubt is starting to, like,
Mhm.
can I do this? What if my baby is big? What if? And
Right.
and as a society, we're not really good at reassuring
Mhm.
people that
Mhm.
their bodies can do things, hard things,
Mhm. Mhm.
or that we're capable of doing all these things. We hear,
Right.
oh, you'll want the epidural, or you don't want any part of those contractions, and like just get the epidural, and then we don't know, the downsides of epidurals, and
Yep.
what happens when interventions, what the pros and cons are, and if you
Yes.
are like, I just want the epidural, you're not going to ask, is there a better
Right.
time to get it than not? Is like, what are the actual pros and
Right.
cons of
Yes.
it? What do we see happen when we get an epidural versus not having one,
Mhm.
waiting later, getting it sooner, all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. We don't really have those conversations. And then our healthcare providers don't always have the time to sit there and be like, so here's all the education that I would like you to know about
Right.
beforehand, which is where I find I feel a lot of that gap when I'm doing my prenatal
Mm.
education of like, here is your medical options. Here's your holistic
Mhm.
options. Here's like, you can do both. Here's your
Right.
pros and cons for both. And then if you have any more questions, like medically, write them down and take them to your provider, and then have those conversations. I'm kind of
Mhm.
bridging that gap of like, here's all the stuff everybody would like you to know. And then
Right.
you can go and research what, oh, I don't quite understand that, or I need more information here, or what does that look like medically, specific
Right.
to my provider or the hospital I'm birthing at,
Mhm. Mhm.
or whatnot. Um, Same with
Yes.
postpartum. Lots of people, yeah, they get pregnant and they're like, oh my gosh, birth is such a scary big event. And they really forget about postpartum. Postpartum's forever. Postpartum like doesn't go away.
Right. We think postpartum, like, maybe up to a year.
Yeah,
Maybe. Yeah.
exactly. If
Yes.
that
Mhm.
sometimes, and people are really just, having a birth, or their birth, and it could be going all sorts of different ways that could be traumatic versus perfectly fine.
Yep.
Um, and then they are all just kind of sent home. Good luck.
Yes.
Keep this little thing alive, and hope
Yes.
let us know if anything's wrong. But like, what is normal? What is
Mhm.
what does wrong look like? Right.
Mhm.
We also, as a society,
Mhm.
that village aspect of raising kids really isn't there, and we're not
Yep.
sharing those stories. And
Mhm.
if we are, it's like, oh, get some sleep in your pregnancy, because you're not going to sleep when the baby comes. Like, that's not helpful information, like,
Yeah.
how do we get a baby to sleep? Like, what works and what doesn't? And
Yeah.
understanding how, when we're giving advice or suggestions, people have really strong opinions about things, which,
Yes.
as someone that's overwhelmed with whatever's going on to begin with, being told this is what you need to do, and you're like, I don't resonate with that, or like, it's really not working for me.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
we don't we don't let parents like have that permission to like say no. I'm like, that didn't work. Can we try something else?
Hmm.
Everybody just comes on so strong. You need to sleep train or just go to
Yes.
formula if breastfeeding is a struggle or do this and do that. And so I find doulas
Yep.
are really again bridging that informational gap of like, yeah, you can go to bottles, but what if we tried this? Do you have the mental capacity to give this
Yes.
a try? Um, and we're taking some of that bias away
Hmm.
because it isn't our baby. We are not up at 3 a.m. trying
Yes.
to feed this
Yes.
little
You're not as
baby.
emotionally invested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and we're not medical either, right? So
Right.
we have that flexibility of like, here is your, more medical options or what the science says. Here's what anecdotally other people have done over the years. Here's what, midwives do versus
Yes.
OB in sharing that information in a not scary way, in a non biased way,
Yes.
and giving that flexibility and that ability to for parents to grow and learn, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
is what stepping into parenthood, no matter how many times you have to step into parenthood, that is what's happening. You're growing and learning and maybe unlearning things, maybe from your
Yes.
childhood and whatnot. That all creeps up when you have a kid as well. So
Oh, yes. And then the relationship with like grandparents or in-laws or extended family or all the things.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
communication, boundaries, like babies blow
Right.
all that up.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's hearing you talk about just like so much that we don't know or don't know that we don't know. And
right.
that village of I was saying just before, we kind of started recording how it amazes me how much we still don't do to support parents. Like we, after like thousands and thousands of years of of doing this, that we're in a place where so many people don't know
Mhm.
all of this, or things still are there still are such gaps in services sometimes, or how it I I think sometimes I grew up in Southern Ontario, and so there was this. I certainly grew up with this sense of like everything's available,
Right.
services are there, and when I was pregnant, I was living in very rural. I was living in rural Manitoba,
Yeah.
and, so there was a nurse practitioner, and it was sort of, there were two hospital options that were, both about an hour and a half away. And it was one would have the option of an epidural if I wanted it, one wouldn't. Like you kind of had to determine which hospital you would be directed to. And, you're like 15 weeks pregnant. You're like, I don't know where to go. And then we relocated to Southern Ontario where it was this like massive OB clinic. And you're kind of just like rotated, just there with like so many people rotated through. I didn't even know who I was seeing when I
Right.
was going, right? And just such a change in service or what it was like. And then I relocated to Huntsville, you know, which is then where I delivered with my family doctor, who was, fabulous. But it made me realize too, just this idea of, you know, depending on where we live too, like wow, it changes
Yeah.
what's available or the immediacy of what's available. And then just how isolating it is after
Yeah.
of, you really have to go try to find support if you want it, if you're in a place to even try to get out of the house. Like
Right.
it's, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I had I'm sure you hear this all the time, right? But like I had no idea,
Yeah.
just how impactful that, which you kind of know it will be, but you don't really know it will be until you do
Yeah.
it. And then, hmm
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely one thing, and I see it often with my clients since I am full spectrum, so I'm with them quite
hmm
for long periods of time. So, I can see, they're open to all the education prenatally and they're making their notes and they're like, oh, this is really good information. And they're doing their research and all
yes,
the things. And then birth comes and then postpartum comes. And they're like, oh my God. Like that was insane. And even though I am still there in
Mhm.
that supportive role and walking alongside them
Mhm.
and whatnot, it is still something like there's nothing that you can even really compare it to
No.
prior to, right? It's birth and postpartum, like those few weeks postpartum while you're in survival mode and everybody's, screaming and crying and bleeding and oozing and all the things
Mhm.
and trying to heal all the things and adjust and stuff. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, like what happened?
What just happened? Yes. Totally. Yes.
And
Totally.
it's not and like so the education piece, yes, it helps like reduce the fear and
Mhm.
lower expectations for themselves and
Mhm.
whatnot so that they aren't going with unrealistic expectations or are
Yeah.
very rigid in a birth plan. And so it's very
Yes.
traumatic when it deviates and
Yes.
whatnot. So that is definitely helpful, but it's still like you still have to work through it all, and that affects people
Mhm.
wildly different. So you can't even say like this is what you're going to experience because
Yes.
for some people they're fine with sleep deprivation. They just
Yes. Yeah.
hammer it out and they're like broken sleep, no problem. But this
Yeah.
eating the baby thing is a wild time and I'm struggling and or vice versa
Yeah.
and whatnot. Um, so yeah, it's and there's nothing prior to that that can really you can really compare it
Right.
to
Yes. Yeah. It's
help
that
be like,
context to like take it all in with.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
exactly. So I think that is where um as the nuclear family developed and we kind of lost more of that village where we spread out maybe away
Hmm.
from family or
Hmm.
parents are working, longer into their
Yes.
60s, sometimes longer and whatnot, and aren't
Yes.
available to help and do that nurturing piece and whatnot. That's where doulas have really become
Mm.
that full village where the education where the walking along where the this is
Yeah.
okay, this is not okay, this is here's your resources within the community where
Yes.
you're helping them get out and whatnot and filling all these gaps that more historically would
Hmm.
have all the aunties and matriarchs and whatnot would have converged on
Right.
a
Yes.
new mom and
Yeah.
baby and whatnot and helped
Yes.
out. And we've really lost that. And in that, we've lost that storytelling piece as well. Like
Yeah.
we hear a lot of those traumatic stories, but we also don't really want to listen to the good ones. Right? We
Hmm.
don't really want to hear people that had good births or fast births or that were like, oh, good for you. You know what I mean? Or you have
Yes,
a
I
good
do. Yeah.
sleeper, good for you.
Yeah,
Um,
you almost don't want to. Yes. It when
so
some.
we
Yes.
pigeonhole the good ones too. And the good ones are in there quietly in the groups being like, "Oh, I can't share that my baby's sleeping through the night because I've got 10 other moms that are on the verge of a meltdown from sleep deprivation and they are struggling."
Yes.
Or yeah, you don't want to share, your good birth story because your best friend is sitting there sobbing because she feels absolutely devastated by her birth.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Those get silenced
Yeah.
out
So
of
we're
this.
we're,
Yes.
hearing all the negative things or the more traumatic ones,
Hmm.
which need to be processed 100%. But
Yep.
then yeah, also silencing, the good ones, the encouraging ones, the ones that like, yeah, I can birth a 10-pound baby without meds or,
Sure.
that
Yes.
can reclaim that the matriarchy essentially.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. So if people are thinking, if they're listening to this or they're thinking about maternal mental health, because I think we hear a lot more about it right now, but they're not pregnant or their partner isn't, this isn't, it can feel doesn't apply to me.
right.
You know, why should it? Like why should we all care more about this?
Right. Um, yeah, it really does take that village, right? I know we say that a lot, we hear it a lot.
Mhm.
Um, but and this is why doulas shine. we aren't experiencing that sleep deprivation, but we have the experience or we have the education, right? So we
Mhm.
can come in and say, hey, go have a sleep. Go, I'll bring
Right.
you some food and we can chat about things and get some things off your chest or fold some laundry for you.
Mhm.
That should also fall on family members. People
Mhm.
that don't even want kids. That's fine. You don't have to do the whole baby thing. Like, you don't have to even hold the baby. Go over and wash some dishes. If
Right.
you're at the grocery store, we say, "Hey, I'm at the store. Do you need some milk and diapers or like what are you low
Mhm.
on? Let me know. I'll swing by and bring it." And
Yeah.
I think we're not understanding how those acts and that showing up piece is affecting that maternal mental health. And if
Mhm.
we have mom who is supported
Mhm.
in her mental health by her village, whatever that village ends up looking like, and
Mhm.
whoever is showing up, then we see that she can then show up for her kids better
Yeah.
and her partner. Um, we see better communication among in relationships. We see,
Mhm.
less of that postpartum rage
Mhm.
as well, which is not really spoken a lot about, but that's oftentimes how it comes out, is an overstimulation of parents
Yes.
and we're like just go watch some TV or like I can't handle the crying anymore. I
Mhm.
don't want to be touched, and things like that. So, and the mental load that comes with uh, being a mom as well
Yes.
and whatnot as your kids get older. So, uh,
Yeah. Yeah,
it,
I like your idea that when you did the grocery store one, that example of just like, hey, I'm here, what can I get you?
yeah,
I love that because it's so different than saying, hey, do you need anything from, is there
because
anything
that,
I can do for you? Do you need anything from the store? Those can be mentally just like really difficult questions to answer. It's like, I don't even know.
exactly.
And or the sense of like, no, 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 like I'm fine. It's okay. But if you say like, hey, I'm here. I'm picking stuff up, I'm going to drop things off. What do you want me to
Yeah,
drop off? Or if you make it more, I'm doing it anyways, or
right.
directive, then it can be easier
Yeah.
to accept. Hmm.
I've even like I had made a giant pot of either was super chili one day.
Hmm.
And I had a client and she was just really struggling. She had called me up and said, "Hey, like I need to chat, I need to visit, like can you come over?" And I brought my entire crock pot full of soup and I was like, "It is now yours." And like
Yeah. Yeah.
my family had food. I was again, I wasn't in crisis. I wasn't
Yeah.
having deprivation. I wasn't ups like my emotional
Hmm.
turmoil was fine.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I was like, I can make a new meal.
Yes. Yes. I
This
have the capacity.
and she, had soup for I think like 2 days, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was nutritious and
Yeah.
it's not a bother for me. And so I just brought
Hmm.
that along. So, if more people brought a pot of
Yes.
soup along or your
Yes.
coffee or whatever have you when they came for a visit, or
Yeah.
said, yeah,
Just
of course we'll
yes, the
chat
show
and
up.
showed up. Yeah, with
Hmm.
that. Because
Hmm.
you aren't the one going through this transition and having all these big feels and
Yeah.
your mental capacity is quite a bit lower because it's so focused on this transition, right? We scientifically know now that our brains, when we transition to motherhood specifically, are
Mhm.
being changed like they do in
Yes.
puberty, right? It's a whole brain change. And
Yeah.
we talk about, mommy brain and how we forget things and whatnot, but really it's because at the science level, at the physiological level, mammal level, if you will, our brains are like, you are creating life, you're making a baby, and that's what we need you to focus on because this
Right.
little thing really does take all the time. So work and cleaning and, who has appointments when, like that was
Right.
scientifically, our brains have not caught up to doing both, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's why it is mommy brain. And we're trying to actively forget the background
Mhm.
noise so that we can fully embrace this
Yes.
transition. And society doesn't
Right.
let us do that. And
No,
that's where we
I'm
see
hearing
our
you say
mental
that,
health
and
decline.
yeah, it's like, but we're in this place that's like expecting us to still do that, which is yes. And so then we're not, so then we're failing at it.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And we turn it back onto ourselves. Oh, I'm not a good mom, or I'm not a
Hmm.
good partner.
Hmm.
I can't, we hear all the, my great grandmother or something, or even the grandmothers had like 13 kids and she doesn't have mental health problems, or we never heard
Yeah.
that she was crying on our bathroom floor, hiding from her children, or whatever
Yes.
have you.
Yes.
Which probably isn't true, first of all, but
Hmm.
and but we start to kind of reflect that back and take that on ourselves as like a failure
Yeah.
as well, and
Yes.
we see that if we start to build that village, if um you start to have people
Hmm.
show up and just say,
Hmm.
here, you have a meal now, you don't have to think about dinner tonight, and
Hmm.
you will visibly see that mom be like,
Hmm.
okay,
Yes.
one, like, that is great. Even if I don't necessarily feel like eating, I know my husband or my partner has something that he can have or they can have, and
Yep.
they have other kiddos, like we could just dish it and go
Totally.
to the thing.
Yep.
And yeah, definitely asking in that, I'm here, what do you need, is
Hmm.
taking off that mental load of make me a grocery list and
Hmm.
get it done for you, right?
Yes.
At that point, you might as well just go to the grocery store.
I know. Well, and yeah, yes, and it's the relief of just, um, yeah, I'm thinking like I don't ask for help easily. I'm working on it. But and I'm even just that idea of the village, like when you were saying that, I was thinking, it was just recently actually, and like so. I mean, this isn't a baby reference, but just recently, the pipes in our house froze when we had that really cold spout.
Yep.
And I remember we called our neighbors to see if they had water because we were kind of hoping it was a town problem.
Right.
It wasn't. It was an us problem.
Right.
And so they said, no, like we have running water. And so then, you're going through just oh, like how do you, it's a weekend, how do you figure it out? And within it was probably like 10 minutes later, one of my neighbors is at the door with like huge pails of water that he'd brought over and was just like, hey, just, had a space heater in case, like just like showed up with stuff and was like, we'll just leave this here if you need it. And here's the code to the house. Just go back and forth, fill them up and right. It's just that it's the show up.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, that's that's exactly what because we wouldn't, to have asked or do you want this? Be like, no, we'll go, we'll figure it out, right? But it was huge. Like it just such a game changer. And so I think, yeah, put then people in this, very like emotionally vulnerable, sleep deprived transition time. Yeah, if we cared differently, then our neighbors are better, our communities are better, our coworkers are
Mhm.
better, our employees are better, our like everybody, it
Yeah.
has such an impact. The other kids, if there are other kids in the home, I would imagine that would have such an impact on them
Mhm.
if parents are struggling or if things so they would show up differently at school or at daycare or I
Yeah.
yeah, I could see such a domino effect of it, right?
Right. Yeah. And
Hmm.
so if we are supporting the perinatal mental health aspect in
Hmm.
both parents as well, we see that trickle down, right? The
Hmm.
waves start of like, okay, yeah, mom and dad or your parents can show up for the
Hmm.
kids in a better space, headspace,
Hmm.
and emotionally stable space,
Yes.
which then we can teach emotional resilience and be there for all the
Yep.
wild emotions that kids go through as they're learning about emotions and how to deal with them all and whatnot. And then
Hmm.
they get older, have their own kids, and it trickles and trickles and trickles, right?
Yes. Yep.
Where we have seen lots of people that fall through the cracks or don't get the help, and that's when we see that it's trickling down, and you
Yep.
know we see a problem, we kind of look above, we're like, oh yeah, there was an issue there as well. We look above,
Hmm.
there's that generational trauma, right?
Hmm.
That starts to happen. So um if we
Hmm.
can, yeah, get back to building that village for people as
Yeah.
well. And because it can be hard, like you said, to ask for help. And
Hmm.
sometimes even in family dynamics, whatever family dynamics are going on, it can look like, yeah, maybe I can't ask my
Yeah,
mom.
or like I don't want to show weakness or,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And it does feel like a failure of some sort to
Hmm.
ask for help, and we kind of need to get out of that
Yeah.
mindset as a society, and putting that on
Hmm.
parents, especially newer parents, of that asking for help is some sort of
Yeah.
failure that you couldn't handle parenthood.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes even people like that hire doulas or like, feeling that of like, oh, I needed to hire someone
Um,
to get through this. And it's like, well, no, like you
right.
like that's why we're here. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's not
But it
a
could have been.
failure. It is, if
Mhm.
anything, that is like that step into building your village. And
Yes.
I want you
Yeah.
I
Yes.
want
Or
you to
like
build your
recognizing.
village.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it's a it's
Yeah.
it's a it's on the pro side of that list, not a con, um,
Yes.
to doing that. And maybe we need to hire, more of like a house cleaning service or a meal train service of some sort. Like maybe we do
Mm-hmm.
have to subcontract out our village, um,
Yes.
in today's day
Well,
and age, but it's still building your
yes.
village, and that's good.
Yeah. So yes, a village is good. And, and then it's also like, so in some ways, as a society, disappointing that like we need to buy it in some ways, right? Or like, or for some people who can't afford it.
Mhm.
Um, So if we go this like, step above, all the way, even from a like policy perspective, um, if you could, if you could just like change something within the system, you know, like what do you think would, what do you think would be most impactful? Like if we had someone come in and say like, I'm so pro, you know, families, mental health, community support. So I'm just gonna do this to the.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's like a really loaded question.
Yeah,
There's
there's
so
probably
many,
yeah.
I feel like there's so many systems that like play into parenthood and new families, but
I
they're
know
all,
I said this
you
because
know,
I was gonna say like healthcare system, but I'm like, oh, but it's so much more than that one. So
it is. Oh gosh, like if I could like broadcast to
yeah,
society on repeat of be like, build the village.
yeah, yeah.
Just it's the showing up aspect, honestly. It is, you know, not making people ask for help. It is, I am here to help. Use
Hmm.
me.
So accessibility,
Access,
we
yeah,
need things that are more accessible.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. In
yeah,
having that mentality of,
yeah.
yeah, if your neighbor is pregnant, start chatting to them. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
How
Like,
How do you find the accessibility piece with that in terms of the village? Because I know like Muskoka, I mean, is people think towns, but like, can be very rural.
mhm,
Um, what is that like for people where, there isn't public transportation and they might be living out a road of, neighbors aren't nearby. They can't necessarily just get into an early on center or something.
right.
Um, How do they navigate that? Or are there things you suggest to them to try to
Yeah.
figure that out?
Yeah, usually prenatally I do chat about like what does that village look like? What are your supports?
Okay.
What is around you and
Yeah.
whatnot. We are actively kind of planning
Yeah.
for that in before baby arrives.
Yes.
And yeah, if they don't have a vehicle, who does in their family or their friend, like who has that? How are you getting to appointments?
Hmm.
What services are available, because each town may have something a little bit
Yes.
different as well, and where do we look for that? Um, it is, can you have someone that can come in even like on the weekends
Right.
and go for a walk with you,
Right.
and just to get you out of the house,
Hmm.
so that you like the four walls aren't kind of closing in, which is really
Yeah.
good for your mental health in general.
Yes. Yep.
And so, and then, maybe once baby's a little bit older,
Hmm.
what does that look like for getting out of the house? Can we, yeah, have
Hmm.
we talked to like neighbors that maybe they may be far apart, but um, do we have, can we do, social media is sometimes good for
Yeah. Okay.
doing groups. Like I know there's like the
Yep.
Mosquito Mamas Facebook group, so
Oh
people
yeah, sure. Yeah, we have a
can be
Northern
like,
Mamas
hey, like
Facebook
I
group.
have this month old or this year
Mhm.
old. Is there anybody around me? I'm like located in and around here, and then they can do like a group chat. And
Yes.
so you have about the same aged kids, and even if nap times aren't aligning and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
then at least if you're awake at 3 a.m., there's probably likely another mom that is like, oh yeah, I'm awake feeding baby too.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
We are going through things very similar in milestone wise or whatnot. So that can be really helpful for like more rural people that feel
Mhm.
that isolation. So
Yep.
um
Yeah, so sort of what do you have, like what's already present that we can kind of like build or leverage, and then
yeah,
realistically, what does this look like for you
right.
when, mhm.
And that can be overwhelming to try and research all of that. So I
Yep.
have like a community list that kind of I can start
Yeah.
with
Right.
clients and then say like, oh yeah, like I've heard about this. I'm always on socials too, being like, oh, screenshotting things and sending it to a client because I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
this workout with mom and baby or something is in Port Carling and I have a Port Carling client, so here you go. And then I need to
Right.
be helping
Yes.
out somewhere and I'm like, oh, this would be great. Or someone's looking for daycare and I'm like, oh, I see someone that's close to my client, so here you go. So
Yeah, I imagine you'd have to like you'd be trying to stay like super current on just
yeah.
everything that's offered, right? It's kind of like knowledge broker almost
Yeah.
of
And
sharing. Yeah.
word of mouth really works too, right? I have a pretty full
Mhm.
roster of clients. So I'm like, hey, what are you up to? And they're like, oh, we've got this music class, we've got swimming,
Yeah.
we got this. And I'm like, oh, tell me more. And then I go to my next client and they're like, yeah, like I don't really know like how to get out with baby and stuff. I'm like,
Right.
let's go to a music class together. And
Yes.
sometimes I have to like bridge that and be like, let's go together. And then,
Mhm.
and boost their
Mhm.
confidence a little bit. But after about one outing, then they're like, oh, this is not as
Bad as I thought it would be.
serious as I thought it
Yeah.
was going to be. And it's
Yes.
okay if my baby cries, or,
Yes.
I'll get the hang of breastfeeding in public and
Yes.
things like that. Um,
Yes.
so even just some like simple things as even just, hey, can you come with me shopping? And in
Mhm.
case my baby cries and I feel like I need to go to the car, you can continue shopping or check out for me, or you can take baby for a walk. Like elsewhere
Yep.
I'll finish and stuff, and even showing up like that as a friend or family member or neighbor or whatever have
Yes.
you, like that can go a long way in
Yeah.
making sure that that parent goes out again
Yes.
and
Yes.
continues to socialize as well and take advantage
Mhm.
of adult conversation and
Yes.
whatnot versus someone
Yes.
that like the baby just freaked out and everybody's looking at them and they don't know how to necessarily get baby latched in public without flashing everybody or
Yeah.
something, and it's like I'll just not go again. That was horrific and I'll not
Mhm.
go, and then
Mhm.
those four walls close in again.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Um, we've talked so much about, what you're currently doing. But you started your own business. It took, I'm sure, a journey to get where you are. And you kind of found maybe through your own experience too, right? But found this area where you thought, okay, something could be done differently. Let's like look at
Mm.
other ways of doing things.
Mhm.
um, Sort of that like exception seeking, idea. Um, when you look back, is there a certain experience that you can look at, or like what do you think gave you the confidence to be able to say, or courage maybe, or the gumption to say, okay, I think there's another path for me and I'm going to try it.
Right. It really was the whiplash of becoming a mom myself. I am definitely like a big book nerd. I am not afraid of research. I have
Mhm.
worked with kids in various aspects. I've nannied, I've taught, been working with kids for such a long time, and it was
Yes.
always this dream of mine to be a mom. And I just had that drive. I was like, I'm gonna have kids one day. So then when I got pregnant and my pregnancies were not
Mhm.
great, they were really hard and difficult, which was not something that I necessarily would have considered trying to get pregnant, right? It's not
Yes.
like you
Yeah,
get
you don't
pregnant
think
being
about
like, this
it.
is gonna suck.
Yes. Yes.
And then having my babies, then it was lonely, and I was like,
Mhm.
why do I not know this? I read the books.
Mm.
I went to some classes. I didn't go in just getting pregnant and winging it.
Right.
Why am I still struggling? Like
Mm.
this can't be normal. Like why
Right.
I know it's hard. Everybody that you hear about that, but like,
Yes.
why is it so lonely? Why does nobody want to talk about these ins and outs? And why do we glorify everything? Because I wasn't someone that felt good in my pregnancy. I was like, this is not sunshine and rainbows. I am not glowing. This is
Mhm.
awful.
Mhm.
And I felt like I couldn't talk about it because everybody's like, "Oh, like making life is so great and it's such a
Mhm.
miracle." And I'm like, "It's a miracle if
Mhm.
I make it to birth." Like
Mhm.
it was
Yes.
quite difficult. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um and then yeah, I didn't have a ton of support. I didn't know how to ask for support. I didn't know, like, I wanted to keep my babies with me. So it felt weird to be like, "Hey, can you come like do like cook for me or
Right.
do
Right.
laundry for me?" Like that's where I'm struggling, is to like keep up with my house and
Mhm.
get out of the house. I didn't know how to get out and breastfeed. I was terrified
Mhm.
of people looking at me because
Yes.
I don't like to be a center of attention. So a screaming baby while I'm trying to latch them, I'm like, oh my God, that's like my worst nightmare.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And yeah,
Yeah.
nobody was really like, oh yeah, like that's okay. I did that too.
Right. Okay.
So
Yes.
I was, and there was a moment specifically around breastfeeding, about 4 months in, and I was struggling, and it was one of those weekend things, right? You, I'm not going to go to emerge for it. I like nobody's in distress, but like I felt like I couldn't latch. I felt like my milk supply was low. And I was like, where do I go? Who do I
Right.
ask? I don't
Yes.
have any currently breastfeeding friends. I was a younger mom too. I had my first when I was 21. So most of my friends were still in college or
Right.
doing
Right.
their own
Right.
thing in their 20s. So like they
Yes.
were like, I don't know. And the handful that had kids were out of that stage, and
Mhm.
you
And how
know,
quickly you
oh
forget
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
that
exactly. They're like, oh
yeah.
yeah, I don't really remember, but maybe try this. And so
Yeah.
I had called the health unit like sobbing because I had a lactation consultant, and I was like, can someone please help me? And she was the first person to come to my home for starters. I wasn't having
Mhm.
to leave my house and pack up my baby and try and figure it out. I didn't have to pay for her services, and she came to my home and we figured out what was going on, and she was the first one in the whole 4 months to say, "You're doing a good job."
Wow.
And I was like, "What do you mean?" Because I feel like I've been failing this whole time.
Yes.
And she was the one that said, "You were doing such a good job. I would like you to come and be a peer support person for our breastfeeding program." And
Wow.
that whole interaction, it was maybe an hour,
Yes.
really was like, okay, I can make a change here. I can
Mm.
make sure people don't feel like they have never been told, "I'm so proud of you," or "You're doing a
Yes.
great job," for
Yes.
4 months or 12 years or whatever it is. And it
Yes.
kind of just snowballed from there of like,
Mm.
I feel like if someone had just recognized and said, "I'm so proud of you. You are doing such a good job. This is just
Yeah.
hard,
Yes.
but you're doing great."
Yes. Yes. The hardness doesn't mean you're not doing it well.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just that hard. And I
Wow, the
think
power of that one interaction, hey?
yeah. And
Yeah.
the books didn't really mention, like,
Mm.
yes, they say it's hard. You hear it's hard, but to go through it and then not have anybody being like, I'm so proud of you, or you're doing so good, and this is just hard, and that doesn't make it less than, or you're not struggling. You just have to work through this, and it is
Yes.
a harder thing to do. You haven't done it before. You haven't done it
Yeah.
like this before. Because one baby, like going from one to two babies, is difficult in its own way. And I had opposite babies a lot of the time. So what my first did, my second didn't do, but he did things that my first didn't do. So I was like,
Okay.
what? Why do I not know things?
Yes. 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 Yeah.
So
There.
as
This.
that, yeah, so that is kind of the catalyst that happened of like, you know what? I'm going to start talking about it. I'm going to start telling people that they are glorious in their struggles, and that they're doing all the hard things, and that we can do them together, and then showing and like learning that, showing up like in that way of, instead of asking
Mm-hmm.
what do you need, just showing up
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
filling a role of some sort. And
Yeah.
I have had multiple friends now have kids, and they have come back and said, wow, yeah, I didn't show up, and I'm really sorry for that. And they, until they had their own kids, right, they really
Yes.
do recognize that. And that is what I feel like I'm trying to prevent, or trying to build up with that talking about that village, and just showing up prior to, and helping that mental health aspect as well.
Yeah.
Because yeah, we don't want everybody to just learn the hard way, which is
No, yes. Yeah, I think it does happen more than it needs to.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. We all need you somewhere.
Right.
Just showing
Yeah.
up and
And
saying
you know,
you're
there
doing okay.
there's more of a movement now where people are being a little bit more conscious about if they want to have children, which is
Hmm.
great. But at the same time, if they are not doing that aspect, then I feel like they should be aware that they have the opportunity to help out and be that village, not to like
Yeah.
take over or be running around like craziness, and doing everybody's chores by any means, but to,
Yeah.
if they
There's a
do have
role.
those friends,
Hmm.
saying like, hey, I'm doing groceries, I'm going to bring some by. And
Yes.
just that one interaction could change a whole week. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes. Or the trajectory of a career.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that, you never know.
Exactly. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Emily, thank you for sharing all this. I've loved hearing more about what it is you're doing, and just about the role of doulas, and different ways that we can all support. So yeah, thank you for sharing what you did.
Yeah, it's been so lovely, and
Um,
so glad to have been able to pop on with you.
Thanks for listening to Exception Seekers. Tune in again as we continue to seek overlooked stories that offer new perspectives, disrupt limiting beliefs, and inspire transformative approaches to nurturing youth mental health.
This podcast was produced by North Star Networks, the guiding light for progressive media.